Ma'am, can you step aside for a moment?
What is this? I work here. What's going on?
Identification, please, right now.
Okay, it's in my purse. Hold on. It's right here.
Nice and slow.
Here, this is my wallet. See, my work badge?
Okay.
Look, my name's on it.
Keep it where I can see it. Let me see the card, ma'am.
I'm telling you, I haven't done anything.
No.
A black woman was handcuffed in front of her colleagues and dragged out of her office by federal agents who refused to believe she was a U.S. citizen. What happened next cost the government $9.6 million. Before we continue, let me take this opportunity to thank you so much for supporting our channel. Just choosing to watch our video means a lot to us. Before we go any further, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this is your first time here. Imagine working at the same job for 6 years. You show up every day, do your work, smile at visitors, answer phones. Then one morning, armed federal agents walk through the door, call your name, and tell you you're being arrested. Not for a crime, for existing. This is what happened to Davina Mills on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March 2019. She was a receptionist at a corporate office in downtown Seattle, born in Houston, Texas, raised in Atlanta, American her entire life. But none of that mattered when 2 Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents decided she looked like someone they were looking for. The agents didn't ask questions. They didn't verify facts. They saw her face, checked a photo on their phone, and made up their minds. When Davina told them they had the wrong person, they told her to stop lying. When she offered to show them her driver's license, her birth certificate, her social security card, they waved her off. When she asked what she was being charged with, they said immigration violations. Her co-workers watched in shock. Her boss tried to intervene. The agents threatened to arrest him too if he interfered with a federal operation. Davina was walked out in handcuffs, past the lobby she had greeted people in for years, out onto the street where an unmarked van waited. She kept telling them they had the wrong person. They kept telling her to be quiet. And in that moment, Davina Mills made a decision. She would not let this go. She would not disappear quietly. She would fight back with everything she had. What the agents didn't know was that Davina had something they weren't counting on: proof, documentation, and a refusal to accept injustice. Davina Mills started her day the way she always did: coffee at 7, emails by 8, the front desk phone ringing before 9. She had worked as a receptionist at Meridian Solutions, a tech consulting firm, since 2013. 6 years of the same routine, same desk, same smile for clients walking through the glass doors, same efficiency that made her boss tell new hires she was the backbone of the operation. That Tuesday morning felt no different. She wore a navy blazer, her hair was pulled back. She was answering an email about a conference room booking when the elevator doors opened and 2 men in plain clothes stepped out. They walked straight to her desk, no hesitation. The taller one, Agent Lawrence Hoffman, held up a badge. "Davina Mills?" She looked up. "Yes? We need you to come with us." She blinked. "I'm sorry, what is this about?" "Immigration and Customs Enforcement. You're being detained for immigration violations." The words didn't make sense. Davina felt her stomach drop, but she kept her voice steady. "There must be a mistake. I'm a U.S. citizen." Hoffman glanced at his partner, Agent Nicole Brennan. Brennan pulled out her phone, looked at a photo, then looked at Davina. "You match the description of an individual with an outstanding deportation order." "I'm not who you're looking for," Davina said. "I was born in Houston. I've never even left the country except for a cruise to Mexico in college." "Ma'am, we need you to come with us, now." Her manager, Tom Whitfield, came out of his office. "What's going on here?" "Federal matter, sir. Step back, sir." Tom looked at Davina, then at the agents. "This is insane. Davina's worked here for 6 years. She's a citizen. I've seen her documents for payroll." "Sir, if you interfere with a federal investigation, you can be arrested for obstruction." Davina's hands were shaking now. She reached for her purse. "I have my driver's license, my social security card. My birth certificate is at home, but I can call someone to bring it." Brennan moved closer. "Put your hands on the desk." "What?" "Hands on the desk, now." The office had gone silent. Co-workers stood frozen at their cubicles. Davina placed her hands flat on the desk, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not to her.
"You're being detained pending verification of identity."
Then verify my identity. I'm telling you who I am. The metal cuffs clicked around her wrists. Cold, tight, humiliating. Tom stepped forward again. This is wrong. You can't just... Step back, sir. Final warning. They led Davina toward the elevator. She looked back at Tom, at her coworkers, at the desk where her coffee still sat steaming. 20 people watched her being taken away like a criminal. 20 witnesses to her humiliation. In the elevator, she tried again. Please, just look at my ID. Call someone. I can prove. Save it for processing, Hoffman said. The doors opened to the lobby. More people stared. The security guard she said good morning to every day stood there, confused. Davina wanted to explain, to shout that this was a mistake, but her throat was too tight. They put her in an unmarked van. No explanation, no rights read, no phone call offered. As the van pulled away from the building, Davina stared out the tinted window at the city she had lived in for a decade. The city where she paid taxes, voted, volunteered at a youth center on weekends. She was an American, but in that moment, it didn't matter what she was. It only mattered what they decided she was. The van drove for 40 minutes. Davina sat in silence, her wrists aching from the cuffs. Brennan sat across from her, scrolling through her phone. Hoffman drove. Neither spoke to her. They arrived at a detention facility on the outskirts of the city. Gray concrete, barbed wire, a place Davina had only seen on the news. Inside, they removed her handcuffs and took her to a processing room. A different agent, a woman named Torres, sat behind a desk with a computer. Name, Torres said without looking up. Davina Mills, but I need to tell you. Date of birth. April 12, 1987. Listen, there's been a mistake. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in Houston, Texas. Torres typed something. Country of origin? The United States. I just told you. Do you have documentation proving citizenship? Yes, at home, and in my purse, which your agents took. My driver's license, social security card. Washington State driver's license doesn't prove citizenship. Davina felt frustration rising. Then let me call someone to bring my birth certificate. Let me call a lawyer. Let me make a phone call. Torres finally looked up. You'll be allowed one call after processing is complete. When is that? When we finish verifying your identity against our database. How long does that take? Depends. They took her photo, fingerprints, made her empty her pockets. Her phone, her wallet, her keys, everything went into a plastic bag. They gave her a detention number and led her to a holding cell with 8 other women. The cell was cold. Metal benches lined the walls. One toilet in the corner with no door. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with sweat. Davina sat on a bench and tried to think clearly. She had rights. She knew she had rights, but no one was listening. Hours passed. No phone call, no explanation. At 3 in the afternoon, they brought sandwiches in plastic wrap. Davina couldn't eat. Her mind kept replaying the moment in her office, the handcuffs, the stairs. A woman next to her, young, maybe 20, was crying quietly. How long have you been here? Davina asked. 5 days, the woman whispered. 5 days. Davina stood and walked to the cell door. A guard sat at a desk 20 feet away. Excuse me, I need to make my phone call. The guard didn't look up. You'll be called when it's your turn. It's been 6 hours. You'll be called. I have a right to a phone call. And you'll get one. Sit down. Davina didn't sit down. I'm a U.S. citizen. I shouldn't even be here. This is wrongful detention. The guard finally looked at her. Ma'am, everyone here says they're a citizen. Sit down or you'll be moved to isolation. She sat down, not because she was afraid, because she realized something in that moment. To them, she wasn't Davina Mills. She wasn't a receptionist with a college degree and a clean record. She was just another face, another case number, another person to process and forget. At 7 that evening, they finally let her make a call. She called her sister, Jasmine, in Atlanta. "Davina, where are you? Your boss called me. He said ICE agents?" "Jazz, listen, I'm at a detention center. I need you to overnight my birth certificate, and I need you to find me a lawyer." "What? How is this even? You were born in Houston." "I know. They don't care. They think I'm someone else, and they won't listen." "This is insane. I'm calling a lawyer right now. Are you okay?" Davina's voice broke. "No, I'm not okay." The guard tapped his watch. "Time's up." "Jazz, I have to go. Please hurry." She hung up, back to the cell, back to the cold bench and the fluorescent lights that never turned off. That night, Davina didn't sleep. She thought about her co-workers watching her dragged away. She thought about her mother, who had passed away 3 years ago, who had raised her to believe in fairness and justice. She thought about every time she had heard stories like this and thought, that could never happen to me. But it did happen. It was happening. And somewhere in that sleepless night, Davina's fear turned into something else: anger, determination, a promise to herself that she would not let this break her. They had made a mistake, and she would make sure they paid for it. Davina was released 36 hours after her arrest. 36 hours in a cell. 36 hours of being treated like she didn't belong in her own country. 36 hours that would change everything. Her sister, Jasmine, arrived with the birth certificate, her social security card, and a lawyer named Patricia Okonkwo. Patricia was a civil rights attorney who had handled wrongful detention cases before. She took one look at Davina's documents, and her face went hard. "This shouldn't have taken more than 2 hours to verify," Patricia said. "They had your information from the start." When they finally processed her release, no one apologized. Agent Hoffman handed her the plastic bag with her belongings and told her she was free to go. That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement of the mistake. Davina walked out of that facility wearing the same navy blazer, now wrinkled and stained. Her eyes were hollow. Her hands still trembled. In Patricia's car, she finally broke down. "They treated me like I was nothing, like I was lying about my own life." "I know," Patricia said quietly, "and we're going to make sure this never happens to you again or anyone else." Davina went home, showered for an hour, couldn't wash away the feeling of those handcuffs, couldn't erase the memory of that cell. Her boss, Tom, called. "Take all the time you need. Your job is waiting whenever you're ready." But Davina couldn't go back. Not yet. Every time she thought about walking into that office, she saw the faces of her co-workers watching her being arrested. The shame wasn't hers to carry, but she carried it anyway. She spent weeks in her apartment, barely eating, barely sleeping, jumping every time someone knocked on the door. Her sister flew in from Atlanta and stayed with her. Friends visited. They all said the same things. "It's over now. You're home. You're safe." But Davina didn't feel safe. She felt violated. The government had come into her workplace, humiliated her, locked her up, and then released her like nothing had happened.
Patricia visited with papers. "I've reviewed everything. What happened to you was illegal. They violated your Fourth Amendment rights. They had no warrant, no probable cause. They misidentified you and then refused to verify your identity properly." "Can we sue them?" Davina asked. "We can, and we should. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This will be a long fight, years possibly. The government will defend their agents. They'll try to claim qualified immunity. They'll make you relive this over and over in depositions in court." Davina looked at her hands. She thought about that young woman in the cell who had been there 5 days. She thought about how many others this had happened to, how many others who didn't have a birth certificate handy or a sister who could afford a lawyer. "I want to fight," Davina said, "not just for me, for everyone they've done this to." Patricia smiled. Then let's get to work. The lawsuit was filed 3 months later. Davina Mills versus the Department of Homeland Security, Lawrence Hoffman and Nicole Brennan. The complaint laid it all out: wrongful arrest, violation of civil rights, emotional distress, negligence. The government's response came swift and cold. They claimed the agents had acted in good faith based on available information. They claimed Davina matched the description of a wanted individual. They claimed they had followed proper procedures. Davina read their defense and felt her anger sharpen into focus. Good faith? They had refused to look at her ID. Proper procedures? They had kept her locked up for a day and a half after her identity was verified. Discovery began. Patricia's team pulled records, and what they found made the case even worse. The woman the agents were actually looking for was named Maria Gonzalez. She was 5'2". Davina was 5'7". Maria had a tattoo on her left arm. Davina had no tattoos. Maria was wanted for overstaying a visa from 2015. She had last been seen in Phoenix, Arizona, 800 miles away. The only thing Davina and Maria had in common was brown skin and dark hair. Patricia sat across from Davina in her office. They didn't even try to verify. They saw a brown face and decided that was enough. Davina's voice was steady now, stronger. Then let's make sure a jury hears that. The case moved slowly through the courts. Depositions, motions, delays. The government tried to get it dismissed twice. Both times the judge denied them. In her deposition, Agent Brennan claimed she had performed a thorough comparison. The video evidence told a different story. Security footage from Davina's office showed Brennan glancing at her phone for less than 5 seconds before nodding to Hoffman. 5 seconds. That's all it took to decide Davina Mills wasn't a citizen. Davina went back to work eventually. Different office, different company. She couldn't face the old one. But she showed up every day at Patricia's office, helping with the case, reviewing documents, preparing for trial. 2 years after her arrest, they got a trial date. Davina Mills would face the government in court, and she would tell her story to 12 jurors who would decide what justice looked like. The trial began on a Monday morning in October 2021. Davina sat at the plaintiff's table in a gray suit, her hands folded. Across the aisle, 3 government attorneys sat with legal pads and boxes of files. Agent Hoffman and Agent Brennan sat behind them, expressionless. The jury filed in. 12 people, 6 men, 6 women, different ages, different backgrounds. These were the people who would decide if what happened to Davina mattered. Patricia stood for opening statements. She didn't waste time. Davina Mills is an American citizen, born in Houston, Texas on April 12, 1987. She has never committed a crime, never overstayed a visa because she's never needed one, never been deported because this is her home. But on March 19, 2019, federal agents decided none of that mattered. They looked at her skin, glanced at a photo, and made a choice that would destroy her sense of safety in her own country. The government's attorney, a man named Richard Vasquez, gave a different story. He talked about the difficult job ICE agents have, the pressure to locate individuals with deportation orders, the split-second decisions they make to keep the country safe. This was an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, but the agents acted in good faith, following procedures, doing their jobs. Ms. Mills was inconvenienced, yes, but she was released as soon as the error was discovered. Inconvenienced. The word made Davina's jaw tighten. The first week of trial was all evidence. Patricia presented the documents: Davina's birth certificate, Social Security card, school records from Atlanta, tax returns going back 15 years, everything that proved she was exactly who she said she was. Then came the comparison: photos of Davina next to photos of Maria Gonzalez, the woman the agents were actually looking for. The jury leaned forward, studying them. The height difference was obvious. The facial features clearly different. One juror, an older black woman in the front row, shook her head slowly. Patricia presented the security footage from Davina's office. The jury watched Brennan glance at her phone for 4 seconds.
4 seconds before she nodded. 4 seconds that led to handcuffs. Then came the detention center records. Davina's identity had been verified within 3 hours of her arrival. Her fingerprints didn't match Maria Gonzalez. Her photo didn't match. The database showed no deportation orders for anyone named Davina Mills. Yet she had been held for 36 hours. Patricia called a former ICE supervisor as an expert witness. He testified that standard protocol required immediate release once identity was verified. Keeping someone detained after verification violated policy. Why would they keep her? Patricia asked. The supervisor hesitated. Sometimes there's a reluctance to admit a mistake was made. On cross-examination, Vasquez tried to chip away. He asked about procedure manuals, about discretion, about officer safety. The supervisor didn't budge. There's no safety justification for keeping a verified U.S. citizen locked up, he said. That's just wrong. The second week brought testimony from Davina's co-workers. Tom Whitfield described watching her arrested. I've never seen anything like it. They wouldn't listen, wouldn't look at her ID, just decided she was guilty of something and took her away. A paralegal who had been in the office that day cried on the stand. We all just stood there. We didn't know what to do. Davina was so scared. You could see it in her eyes. Then Davina testified. She walked to the stand in a black dress, her voice clear. Patricia guided her through that morning. The moment the agents arrived, the refusal to verify her identity, the handcuffs in front of her colleagues. How did that make you feel? Patricia asked. Like I didn't matter, like everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, my whole life in this country, none of it was real because they decided it wasn't. She described the detention center, the cold cell, the woman who had been there 5 days, the guard who told her everyone claims to be a citizen. I kept thinking about my mother, Davina said, her voice breaking slightly. She raised me to believe that if you work hard, follow the rules, do everything right, you'll be treated fairly. And I realized in that cell that she was wrong. It doesn't matter what you do. It only matters what people decide you are. Vasquez cross-examined her carefully. He asked about the timeline, about whether anyone physically hurt her, about the fact that she was ultimately released. You weren't beaten, were you? No. You were given food and water. Yes. And you were released once the error was corrected. Davina looked directly at him. I was held in a cage for a day and a half after you knew I was innocent. Do you think that's acceptable? Vasquez didn't answer. He sat down. Agent Hoffman took the stand next. He defended his actions, said he followed procedure, said the resemblance was close enough to warrant detention. Patricia pulled up the photos again, side by side. You think these two women look identical? Hoffman shifted. Similar enough to investigate. For 36 hours after her identity was verified? I wasn't involved in the release decision. Agent Brennan gave the same defense, followed orders, did her job, regrettable mistake. In closing arguments, Patricia faced the jury. Davina Mills's rights were violated. Her dignity was stripped. Her freedom was taken. Not because she did anything wrong, because 2 agents couldn't be bothered to do their jobs correctly. The question you have to answer is simple. What is that worth? Vasquez argued for the government's dismissal. Mistakes happen. Good faith. No malice. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. Guilty on all counts. Violation of Fourth Amendment rights. Negligence. Emotional distress.
And then came the damages. $9.6 million. The courtroom went silent when the jury announced the verdict. $9.6 million. Davina sat frozen. Patricia squeezed her hand under the table. Behind them, Jasmine let out a sob of relief. Across the aisle, the government attorney stared at their notes, expressionless. The judge thanked the jury and dismissed them. As they filed out, the older black woman in the front row looked directly at Davina and nodded once, a small gesture that said everything. We saw you. We believed you. You matter. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around. Patricia made a brief statement. Today, a jury affirmed what should be obvious. Davina Mills is an American citizen. She always was. And what happened to her was a violation of her constitutional rights that cannot be tolerated in a free society. Davina didn't speak to the press that day. She wasn't ready. She walked to Patricia's car and sat in silence, watching the city move around her. People going to work, living their lives, trusting that they belonged. The $9.6 million wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about acknowledgement, about a jury of 12 strangers saying what the government refused to say. You were wronged, and it matters. The government appealed. Of course they did. But 8 months later, they settled for the full amount rather than face another trial. The money went into a trust. Davina donated a portion to organizations that help people detained by ICE who don't have lawyers or resources. People like that young woman in the cell who had been there 5 days. Davina changed after the trial. Not back to who she was before the arrest. That version of her was gone. But into someone stronger. Someone who understood that justice isn't automatic. It has to be fought for. She started speaking publicly at community centers, legal conferences, universities. She told her story not for sympathy, but as a warning. This happened to me, she would say. It can happen to anyone. She met others who had been wrongfully detained. Their stories were painfully similar. Agents who didn't verify, hours or days locked up, released with no apology. Most never sued. Most tried to forget and move on. But Davina's case created a precedent. It made the government more cautious. It gave other attorneys a roadmap for holding federal agents accountable. Agent Hoffman and Agent Brennan were never criminally charged. They received formal reprimands and additional training. Hoffman retired a year after the trial. Brennan still works for ICE. Davina lives in Portland now. She works for a nonprofit that provides legal aid to immigrants. She helps people navigate a system that nearly swallowed her whole. She answers phones, files paperwork, and occasionally sits with someone who's terrified of being taken away. You're going to be okay, she tells them. I'm going to make sure of it. 3 years after the verdict, a law student asked her if she regretted fighting back, if the years of depositions and stress and reliving trauma were worth it. Davina didn't hesitate. Every second. Because if I had stayed silent, they would have gotten away with it, and the next person they did this to wouldn't have my case to point to. Silence protects the people who hurt you. I refused to protect them. She still thinks about that morning sometimes, the handcuffs, the stairs, the cell. But she also thinks about the jury, 12 strangers who listened and believed her, who saw past the government's excuses and recognized injustice when it was put in front of them. The $9.6 million sent a message. Your rights have value. Your dignity has value. Your citizenship cannot be questioned and dismissed because someone couldn't be bothered to verify the truth. Davina Mills was arrested for being the wrong woman, but in the end, she proved she was exactly the right person to fight back, and she won. So here's the question. Do you think justice was served? Or should the agents who did this have faced more than just reprimands? What would you have done in Davina's position? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. We share real stories about real people fighting for what's right. You won't want to miss what's coming next.